Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you happen to be, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Price, and I will be the comedic host for today's presentation on a subject that is extremely serious. And I have a very special guest today. Those of you that follow me know exactly, possibly who it is. I don't know how much I gave away in the beginning, but we'll see what happens. And from that aspect, we'll just let this run out and we're going to go over here and we're going to have a little bit of fun. Again, welcome. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Please put a Q in front of it, preferably a capital Q, so we can have that float to the top of the queue. We don't have an agenda today. This is strictly free form, and we're just going to have a nice chat with our very special guest, who just happens to be today's sponsor. So I have to give it away. I'm sorry, Bob. Today's
Yeah.
sponsor is Lockdown International. The title of this particular presentation is, Are You Concerned About Active Shooters? We have the answer. We actually have two answers. We're going to go into one today. Maybe drift into the other one. I don't know. But Bob Cooke, the CEO of Lockdown International, was gracious enough to accept my invitation. And I believe this is extremely important since I used to live right near Parkland. We all know what happened there. So, without further ado, as they say, let's get this party started. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Cooke of Lockdown International. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Mike, for having us today. I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for my business to be able to disseminate the information to these individuals that they need. Active shootings are going through all over this country on a day-to-day basis, and it's not going away. It's not going away. I'm asked all the time, well, what can we do to stop it? I don't know that we can ever stop it. What we can do is we can set up prevention methods, and through training that gives people options um, to help them survive for 5 to 10 minutes until law enforcement gets on the scene. What we've seen in the past is that's not happening. People are reverting back to the only thing they know to do, and that's to hide. And if they're hiding underneath tables and behind items that don't give them ballistic coverage, they're becoming a victim. So that's why we're here today, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you, and it's been long overdue. And I had a few others that I had to get out of the way, and that's done. And we had Dwayne from SVL a couple weeks ago, and that a whole different ball game there. But this one is, as far as I'm concerned, is probably one of the most important streams that we will ever do because it affects everybody. I don't care whether you're in a school, a church, a mall, wherever. The bottom line is everybody is susceptible.
That is so true. There's not an entity in this country, more than likely, that has not been targeted yet. I mean, we're talking nail salons, shopping centers, as you mentioned a minute ago, churches, for God's sake, schools, and number one being businesses. Everybody thinks that the schools are the number one target. They're not. They only represent about 21% of the active shootings that are going on in this country. However, they get the most publicity. And that's because these are our kids. And well, they should get publicity. But business commerce makes up like 49% of the active shootings going on in this country today. So it doesn't matter where you work or what you do or where you are, you can become a victim at any point of time. And if you don't have options in front of you or know what to do, you're going to become a victim. And that's why this company is doing what it's doing today.
Wonderful. Again, anybody that has a question, please put it in the chat and we'll get it answered right away. And are you ready for a couple generic questions?
Yes.
I think we have a moderator. Seth, you're on. It should show up in my my chat here, and I'll read the question back to you. What are the ABCs and how does this plan work?
All right. Well, the ABCs, obviously, it's an acronym, and it stands for avoid, barricade, counter, and survive. If you attend our 2 hour presentation, this is what we stress, these four options throughout the entire 2 hour presentation. It's an active threat response plan, and it's designed to provide and empower individuals with option based survival skills to stay alive until law enforcement gets on the scene. This specific plan will translate to workspace, school, place of worship, shopping malls, any location. And that's what makes it effective. And it actually guides you through what we've learned from previous incidents. When I say we, that's the FBI, because all our statistical data comes directly from the FBI. And what we talk about during this 2 hours is what we're doing now and what can we do to move forward. How can we make changes? There's so many changes out there that need to be made through legislation, um, everywhere. And until we get some of this done, it's gonna continue to go. But all we can do is train and train and train people on the right things, and then it's up to them to continue to train themselves so they can survive one of these incidents. Law enforcement now, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but it is much different today than it was 10 or 15 years ago. When law enforcement responds to a scene now, they go straight in. The first 3 or 4 officers that get there, they come together and they're straight into the business or the school, whatever it is, and they're looking for one thing, and that's the active shooter. If you're injured, if you're inside that building or that school, unfortunately, these first 4 officers or five are going to step right over top of you. They don't have time to stop and treat you medically. They can't. For every minute they stop to do that, people are dying. So they're going to continue on into the building. They're going to locate that shooter and they're going to take him out. There will be a response team that comes in behind them that's going to treat you and to get you out of that environment. But it's not going to be that first group of officers that come in there. So to kind of go back over, the avoid, barricade, counter, and survive are the four tools that we empower people with during this 2 hour presentation. And we break those down throughout and make it very simple for them to take these methods and apply them to their daily life routines.
How are the ABCs deployed during an active threat situation?
The ABCs are deployed based on your environment. That's what's going to dictate your tactics. And what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you're in a business, a large business, you're going to apply one of these four, or maybe two or three of these four tactics based on the layout of that building. But you have to know your options. You have to be familiar with the avoid, barricade, counter, and survive. And it's not a flow chart. I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but it's not a flow chart. You can apply any of those based on your environment, based on your situation at that point of time. So, and then they can be changed. You can start with maybe an avoidance type situation. And what I mean by avoidance is creating distance between you and the shooter. And that doesn't always mean running. Not everybody can run. And we know that. When you go back and you look at the Las Vegas shooting that occurred, the worst in history, there were people in wheelchairs, there were small kids, um, people not able to run. But could they still create distance between them and the shooter? Absolutely. Absolutely. But what they did was they laid down and they played dead. Well, I'm here to tell you these active shooters do their homework, guys. They know what your behaviors are going to be before they even get there. And this individual knew people were going to do that. And he waited for that. And when those people lay down and play dead, he just picked them off with a high powered rifle, one right after another. So you've got to know what your options are. And if you understand these four options, you'll know exactly which ones need to be applied and when they need to be applied, whether it's barricading a door. Does the door swing inward? Does it swing outward? That's going to make a determination on how you barricade that door. You obviously don't want to pile furniture up in front of a door that swings outward. It's not doing you any good. So making yourself aware of these four tactics and understanding each one of them can be so beneficial to you in life in so many different ways. And you can combine these tactics, as I said earlier, um, if you need to. You might have to start out with a barricading action, and then the gunman unfortunately gains access to your room. And then you've got to go to a counter defense. You've got to use a countermeasure to take that individual out. So that's how that works.
How do I know which tactic to deploy?
Again, it's based on your environment, where you are at that point of time. Are you in a room? Are you able to lock that door? If you can lock that door, you got to remember this: these shooters are there to take out as many individuals as they can in an expedient amount of time. So they're not going to spend any time at all on your door or trying to gain access into the room that you're in. If they can't get in there, they're moving somewhere else. So you want to create time delays, and that's locking a door, barricading a door with furniture. If the door swings outward, then you're going to tie a rope or a cord or something around the door handle. And you and several other individuals are going to play tug of war and not let that individual in. One of the misconceptions that these individuals that are committing these crimes are 6'5", 250 pounds. They're not. They're kids for the most part. When I look back on the Columbine shooters, those guys didn't weigh 140, 150 pounds. There was nothing to them. Anybody could have taken them out. So there comes a point of time where you might have to make that decision. We've got to use a countermeasure. We have got to deploy this measure and do whatever we can to take that individual down. He's already demonstrated by his own methods that he's willing to kill. So if you have to use deadly force against him, then so be it. You would be justified under those circumstances. Another thing that dictates whatever tactic you decide is the shooter inside? Is he outside? Where is he? Um, are there more than one? Are there multiple shooters? That's going to make a difference. If they're outside, then if you're inside, you're a teacher, you've got kids. You don't want to push them out the window because you're putting them into the line of fire. So all these things come into play, and I know it sounds difficult to make those decisions, but if you have gone through the training and you familiarize yourself with these tactics, it's just like anything else. It's going to come naturally for you to make those decisions, to be able to do that. So um, let me. So another thing that dictates that is the types of weapons that are being used. What we're seeing now, if I ask you this question, Mike, what is the number one weapon being used in this country for these active shootings? What would you say?
Probably an AK.
That's what most people say. Believe it or not, 61% of the weapon that's being used now is a handgun. And why is that? Because they're easily to conceal. I've taught this class before with 5 guns on me, and no one ever saw a single one of them. Handguns, that is. AKs are more effective. They do a lot more damage, but they're hard to get into a business. They're hard to get into a school. Not that this doesn't happen, because it has. But the number one weapon of choice right now, when I say number one, I'm talking between shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, handguns, is handguns, and it's 61% of the time. So that makes a difference that they're taking handguns. There can be a combination. We've seen this too. Recently, and when I say recently, I'm going to go back as far as the last 2 years, we have seen a big increase in the AKs now being used, because these shooters realize I can get more people quicker, and I'm doing a lot more body damage with these type rounds than, let's say, a 9mm handgun. So they have switched over quite a bit to some of the semi-automatic weapons. But There's so many factors that dictate at that point in time, what can I do? What can I use? Which one of these methods can I put in place? Again, it also comes down to the victim's capabilities. Are you able to move around? Are you physically able to get out of that environment if you need to? And then also the training and the preparation that these victims have had that are in the schools now. We're trying to train people all over the country and give them the right ideas, because what has happened years ago, the FBI decided to pull quite a few reports from these mass shootings. They took those reports and they looked for commonalities, not only in the suspects, but in the victims. And there were quite a few that came out of this report that the FBI sent us. To give you an example on commonalities for victims, a lot of them would automatically hide underneath something. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to mention it again because this is the number one common mistake being made. They hide in an area that doesn't give them ballistic coverage, underneath desk, behind some type of format that won't stop a semi-automatic round or 9mm, whatever the case may be. And then they become a victim. If we go back and we look at the Virginia Tech shooter, this individual, as they all do, had done his homework prior to arriving that day on campus. He actually rented out a gun range and practiced going down the aisle with two 9mm handguns and shooting at 45-degree angles. Why was that? Because he knew the kids would be hiding underneath desks when he started shooting. Sure enough, when he got there that day, he went into the first classroom, room 206, and guess where every student was? They were underneath desk. So he went down the aisle systematically and executed every one of them that he could. He crossed over to another room. Guess where they are? Same thing. We see this and we hear this all the time, Mike. Every time there's an active shooting in this country, I get an alert on it. And one of the first things I do is I usually will switch over to a news agency so I can hear responses from the witnesses. What happened? And I hear this all the time. Well, we hid underneath desks, we hid underneath here. And that's the wrong thing to do. So at Lockdown International, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reprogram people. This hiding underneath desks really originated from back in the 60s, the early 60s, during the Cuban Missile Crisis when John F. Kennedy was our president. Children were taught at that point of time, hide underneath your table. Like, really, hide underneath the table is going to do you a lot of good if you've got a nuclear bomb coming at you. But nevertheless, that was the training they got. And unfortunately, that characteristic has been passed from generation to generation to generation. And that's why it exists today. So our, I guess, tactics now are at Lockdown International, our obligation is to change that mindset, get away from that. That's not doing anything but getting you injured or worse. So we work hard on that all the time.
What makes the ABC's program different or better than other response programs?
Is this question number 5, Mike? Okay.
Uh, I just lost your camera again, Bob. There you go.
Sorry, I dropped it.
Uh,
Okay.
where is it?
Yeah, that's going to be question number 5. I just want to make sure. Um, the good thing about Lockdown International's plan is that it works in any type of active threat. And when I talk about active threats, that can be a roadside bomb, that could be a shooter in a school, a shooter in a Walmart. Um, there's all types of active threats that are out there. People use cars against pedestrians. That's happened several times where they'll get a large group of people and run a car into it. But at Lockdown International, our plan works in any type of active threat. And it provides the student with numerous option-based survival skills. So he's got more than one skill that can be put into place. And again, that's dictated by your environment. What's going on around you? How many shooters do you have? What type of establishment are you in? Are you able to barricade inside of that establishment? But our response plan can be deployed by people from all walks of life, children, men, women, physically impaired. And not all programs on the market today are capable of doing that. So as we go through this 2 hour presentation and we talk about active shooters, we cover all aspects of those type situations, as well as statistical data that we get from the FBI. What I mean by that is we talk about some of the physical characteristics that go on when your body is under stress. And there's, you lose all type of dexterity skills and everything else when you're that nervous. But we talk about proper breathing methods to control your heart rate, because when your heart rate gets to, let's say, for example, 175 beats per minute, you're done. You're going to become a limp noodle. You're not going to be able to move anymore. So we talk about box breathing, if you would, and how to do that to keep your heart rate from getting to that. But we also talk about the mental aspects of this. And I'm sure, Mike, you've probably heard this before in the reviews of some of these active shootings. It always starts out with somebody saying, well, we thought it was fireworks. We heard we heard pops, but we just thought it was fireworks. So we're reprogramming people. Fireworks are done. Forget about that. Next time you hear what you think is a car backfiring or fireworks, treat it as a gun discharging. You're a lot better off to do that and set up your course of attack at that point of time. Um, so we provide our clients also with an annual updated information and statistical data. Some of these shooters change their modus operandi, if you will. Um, we don't see very often female shooters, but there have been a couple lately. You don't see two shooters very often. It does happen, but normally these are one solo individual, as a solo individual going into a school or business, whatever, and committing these horrific acts. So we also provide at Lockdown International several threat related products to assist individuals during one of these shootings. And that is our barricade box, which is a contraption that fits on the outside of a door frame. It's got a piece of Kevlar strap on it that will withstand 2,000 pounds of tensile pressure, and you simply remove it from the bracket and wrap it around a door handle. No individual in the world can get through that door. You have to be careful when you're applying security devices to doors, because in some states, if you drill into that door in any shape or form, not only do you violate the easement code, but you're getting yourself in a lot of trouble. A fire code as well. And if a fire inspector or a fire marshal comes to your establishment and sees that, not only is he going to make you remove the security device, he's going to make you replace that door because you have now affected the easement of that door. Our device is designed to go on the outside of the door, so you have no drilling whatsoever into the door. And it's a very, very good device, and it's sold very well for us throughout the years. The second thing is an item that we just recently put into place within the last year, and it's called a go bag. It's basically a medical bag, is all it is. But we went through the U.S. military to get their recommendations on the items that needed to be included into that go bag. Sometimes, if you go online, you can look up these medical bags and you get glasses, you get sheets, you get all kinds of stuff in there, candles, things that you really don't need. And we wanted to stay away from that to keep the cost down. So we feel like we have the best go bag on the market today, and it's sold pretty well so far. But it's a new item, so that in of itself is very beneficial for us.
It's also specific to the situation that you're in. It's designed
It is.
for active shooter response or,
It
staying alive, basically.
Yeah, it is. We've had several. colleges that have purchased this barricade box item. And what they have done is they've installed those throughout their campus at every door. And that way, if they go into a lockdown mode, all they've got to do, it takes 6.5 seconds to pull that strap out of the device and attach it to the door, and then you're okay. And it's burning fireproof. I mean, it's fireproof, so you can't burn through it, you can't shoot through it. It's going to do the trick. And then the medical bags, we've had a lot of the businesses on the go bag, I should say, that have purchased those, and they place them in certain designated areas throughout their business or school. And that way, God forbid, if there is an incident, at the school or the business, and someone's shot or stabbed, they have these items there. And I'm talking, the items are like hemostatic agents, chest wound seal, um, tourniquets, and we put the best items on the market into this go bag. And it's got everything you need in there to treat someone until medical staff gets on location. So,
I have another question here. You may have already answered it, but let's see. The benefits of your response plan, I think we already talked about. Uh, I wonder if Seth has any other ones. I think we're just about to where your favorite is coming up, and I can post that. He already did it. Oh,
okay.
let me add that. I like that one. Thank you, Seth. What types of clients do you teach the ABCs to? I'm a
Anybody.
one-man shop. Would you teach? And nobody's going to come to my studio and take me down for the simple reason that my bullets in my 45 make a mess. They're white-tipped hollow points. So, and I even have a sign that says, "Trespassers may be shot and then tried."
Yeah, I mean, I've taught as many as 5 people, Mike. I've taught as many as 600. So we will take on any organization that wants us to come in there and teach them the ABCs. We will do that for any and everybody. We also have the capability, we have a 2 hour recorded video of our presentation that we can rent out. And that saves us from having to travel. And we travel all over the country, but there are times that organizations don't have the funding to bring us to California or Arizona or Germany or wherever. So they'll rent the video, and it's exactly the same as what we do in person. Actually, probably even a little more informative. So that has worked out very well for us. I don't know if I answered your question with that or not, but hopefully I did.
You did, uh, and that question came from actually that came from Seth. Uh, are we about ready to go to Septed? Let's
Yes.
let's get it
Um,
and throw it up there and see what happens.
okay. All
I'll
right.
put it up.
I think when you hear the word SEPTED, obviously that's an acronym as well. It's confusing for most people. So what I thought I would do is start out with the history behind what is a SEPTED. And it was established in this country back in 1960 by an architect by the name of Oscar Newman. And then it was later developed by a criminologist named Ray Jeffrey, and he actually coined the term SEPTED. So, what is SEPTED? It stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And it is a type of situation that we at Lockdown International will go and conduct these SEPTEDs. It's a security analysis, is really what it is for businesses, schools, any type of entity. And it's basically just going through their business and looking for security flaws. We make recommendations at the end of it, and it's up to them to, if they want to make those changes, they can. But SEPTED involves the design use of 4 strategies, and it's natural surveillance, natural access control, territorial reinforcement by using buildings and fences and pavement and signs, wayfare, and landscaping to express ownership of that building. Oftentimes, and I think what they're trying to say in this is that when you get to a building that's got, you see security cameras on the outside, you see signs, pointing to this is where the lobby is, this is where the front office is, and you see some type of controlled environment, you're less likely to try to commit an act on a business like this as opposed to one that the doors are wide open on. So Septet was actually based on the broken window theory, or principle that neglected zones invite crime, and that is true. That is absolutely true. So this in of itself reinforced the need for good property maintenance, um, to assert visible ownership of the space. And appropriate environmental design can also increase the perceived likelihood of someone being detected or even arrested, apprehended. And that's the most significant deterrent to crime. So a SEPTAT is nothing more than a security analysis. And it's the way we conduct them is we'll go into a business or a school and we'll spend an entire day there going through every aspect of that business, from landscaping to mass notification, um, their emergency plans, evacuation plans. We look at every bit of this. We take it all in account. And then from that, we put together our analysis and send that back to them in a PowerPoint type format. So,
Well, here's a good one. In addition to training, what are some of the other things that my organization can do to be proactive for safety programs?
I'm sorry, say that again. Say that again. I'm sorry. I was
Lost your
moving some
camera
papers
again.
around. I'm good. Can you see now?
There we go. In addition to training,
Okay.
what are some of the other things that an organization like mine or yours or whatever can do to be proactive in their safety programs?
Well, training is what I'm going to recommend all the time, Mike. That's going to be the first thing. Getting your employees trained, everybody on the same sheet. I have had calls from organizations that say, well, we just want to train the administrative staff. I don't recommend that, and I don't agree with that, because if your employees are not on the same sheet of music as you are, God forbid if you have one of these type situations, you're not going to know what to do. So everybody needs to be trained. You need to pay attention to your business, as far as, are you keeping your doors closed, locked, putting into place security measures when you can? Are your cameras working properly? Um, there's all kinds of factors that kick into place, but you can take security measures by just basically looking at your business as a whole and making changes where they need to be made.
How long does a how do I say it? SEPTED? Is that the correct
Step
pronunciation?
Dad,
Okay. How long does
that's
it take to
that's
conduct that?
it can be turned around in about 2 to 3 weeks. It just depends on, there's factors. Depends on the size of the establishment itself and what type of encounters we find inside. What type of, not necessarily violations, but security flaws. Is your mass notification up to place? If it's not, then we're going to make some recommendations on what you need to purchase to get that up to scale. So it can take, I guess, to answer your question, Mike, anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks.
And that's how many hours a day? How many? Basically, hours is what a lot of people are probably going to be interested in. 2 to 3 weeks, is that an hour a day, 5 days a week for 2 weeks, or
Well, initially, we're going to come to your business, your school, whatever the entity is, and we're going to spend an entire 8 hours there, minimal 8 hours, going through the establishment so we can find these flaws and then make the recommendations from that. So that's the initial step. Then we come back to Charlotte or wherever, and we sit down and we work on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's hours a day, 6 to 7 hours a day working on this analysis. It's a lot of information. It's very thorough. And we go through every aspect of your business. That is put into a PowerPoint format and then sent back to the, I guess, the client to make those changes if need be.
okay? It sounds like it's almost like a forensic analysis by an accountant.
That's exactly what it is. It is. That's a good analogy. Very good analogy.
I just that just came to me. I have no idea where it came from. Because I have no filter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Next
It's a
question.
yeah.
I think you already answered how will I receive the information? You're going to send it back to me in a PowerPoint, uh, and Seth, do you have anything we need to discuss? I guess not.
You know, hey, when we go back to the SEPTED there, Mike, one thing I do want to say that businesses receiving this analysis that we do for them have experienced a percentage change in certain crimes ranging from a shrinkage of 84% to about 30%. So it does make a difference. It makes a major difference. Once you're made aware of something, you're not aware of it, you don't know to change it.
You don't know
So,
what you don't know.
and you're right. You don't know what you don't know. And another thing is, I want to say this: when we finish this analysis and we send it back to the organization, they are by no means required to make any of these security changes that we have suggested. Some of them can be quite expensive. When you're talking about bulletproof glass and large mass notification systems, they can be very expensive. It's just a recommendation. It's up to them to make the changes.
Let me see. I just made one up myself because I wanted to show it on screen. Can it lower my
Okay.
insurance for the company?
Uh, Yes, it can. Certain organizations, certain insurance companies will give business or a discount on their insurance if they've been through our training, because you're training these employees to stay alive. So the insurance companies have a vested interest in that, and they will give you a discount insurance rate.
Well, that answered the another question that came in. I just abbreviated mine. I believe we already talked about uh, is there a let me just put it up. Is there a legal obligation to implement, or is that something? Let's tie it back to insurance. Okay, you've done the analysis, 2, 3 weeks. I've got it. I've got everything there. And they say, well, we're not going to implement it. Can the insurance company step in and say, you have to, otherwise, we're not going to give you the discount on your insurance? Kind of tied the two together.
Well, yeah, it's a good question, Mike, but that's going to come down to the insurance company. That's their decision. Um, you know, I would like to think that most insurance companies are not going to be quite that specific. Because all we've heard in the past is that if your organization has gone through our training, you're basically just letting your insurance company know that you've had this training, and then the discount is put together through that. But I don't know if they're going to come back and say, well, if you don't change this, they're not going to have the insurance companies are really not, unless you give it to them, they're not going to have our recommendations, our findings. Unless you share that with them, they're not going to know what they are. That's a possibility, but um, it would be up to the individual companies to share with their insurance companies what our suggestions were.
That makes perfect sense. I believe I have a new comment somewhere. Where is it? We got the discount. We got oh, there we go. Do you travel across the U.S.? You believe you said that earlier that it's very expensive to travel to provide training. That's why you have the 2 hour recorded. I'm assuming that 2 hour recording is copyright protected somehow, so it can't be shared. Uh, but the question basically is, will you, not do you, will you travel across the U.S.?
Absolutely. We've been to every corner of the country. We've taught North Dakota, South California, you name it, we've been there, and we're willing to travel everywhere. We hope that you know the airfares will come down a little bit and make it easier on these organizations to bring it to their. But we enjoy traveling to new nations, so we're always willing to do that. We just work it out with each individual company as far as the airfare and accommodations and all that.
Hmm. I believe that might be about it. I'm not seeing any more questions in there
Okay.
to throw up to you, unless Seth's got a couple.
I believe Seth said that was it on his end. He had gotten
Okay.
everything out. So, again, I want to thank you, Mike, for having us today, and I hope we've helped some of these listeners to at least understand some of this. That they need to make changes. You don't need to hide. You don't need to hide.
Well, wrapping up, it sounds to me like you know, it, it's a necessary quote unquote evil because we have to, just like funeral arrangements while you're still alive. You got to think about that. It's eventually that's going to happen. Possibly, thank God, it's not guaranteed that eventually you may be in that situation. So we did that SEPTED training and we never had to use it. You're welcome. Thank you. You got off easy. So
Right. Exactly.
uh, it's been an absolute
People and to
educational
fail those
experience
young.
for me because I had no idea what the ABCs were. And I've known you guys for a couple of months. I never knew what the ABCs were. And anybody else that is watching, uh, and those of you that didn't get in for whatever reason, the video will be available in perpetuity on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And let me go back to the intro very quickly so you can get the information on how to get a hold of uh, Bob and his crew at Lockdown International, 704-489-3508. And operators are standing by. Was I supposed to say that? I don't remember, but we're good to go there.
Sounds professional, Mike.
Bob, thank you very much. Seth, thank you for being the moderator. And we'll see you again, I'm sure. I'd like to have you back if your time permits. Certainly appreciate it. And we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you again, Mike.